The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective. While that includes critical thinking, we are not afraid to ask the tough questions, get to the real truth of the matter. And I am honored and privileged to have a special guest today, none other than Jam herself, just a mom, Dee Dee Hoover. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives.
Thank you so much.
Some of you may know her as the co-author of our latest book, Vax Facts, so you're familiar with her. We also founded kidsfirstforever.com, where we do coaching. She's an incredible coach, and I'm actually asking her questions today because from her coaching experience and her background and training, she's really figured out a way to help people with this topic of picky eaters. And we have had so many parents come to us and say, and these are not only just unvaccinated parents, but it's interesting. You would think we know that vaccine affected or vaccine injured kids oftentimes also have picky eating issues, but we've had a lot of questions from unvaxxed families who are experiencing a kid who was doing fine till 2 or 3 or 4, and then they become, seems like overnight, really picky eaters. So we're going to jump into this and try to understand the why of it all, but I'm going to be really pressing Dee Dee on, well, what do we do? So we want to understand it, but we also want to know what to do. Is it normal for an unvaxxed kid who has been doing fine and then they become really picky?
First of all, if you take out picky, we talk about eating. And when kids are really little, there's a lot of sensory things that affect what they'll eat, how they eat. I think it's trickier for parents when all of a sudden this kid who's been eating fine,
right?
And unless you've done your research like I've had to do and looked into it deeper, there's a lot of reasons that our kids may all of a sudden stop wanting to eat certain foods or not like certain foods.
I often just thought most of the time, well, when I confess how I raised my kids, you'll know, oh yeah, he was the problem. And I'm not saying parents, you're the problem. I'm just not at all. That's not what I meant to imply. But understanding the why of it, I think would really help. Mm-hmm. And I know you've done some deep dive into looking into this. What have you discovered to be the main reasons that kids become picky, especially ones who were previously eating fine?
Right. So one thing you said that I want to immediately sort of pay attention to is that you said that parents think they're the problem, or because again, we think it's behavioral, right? We go straight to behavioral. So parents aren't the problem. There's issues and reasons, but where I do think it becomes behavioral is how we treat that, right? But back
how we respond to their picky eating.
How we respond to that.
Right.
So the first thing we have to do, I think, is look at why. I don't think we have to immediately go into, and I think that's the mistake I hear that parents make, is we go right into, no, you have to eat that. You've been eating that forever. Why are you not wanting it now? That approach, I think, then leads to behavioral issues.
You mean like I had a brother, sorry to throw you under the bus, brother. I had a brother who, he had 2 girls, and he parented in a way that you're going to eat what's healthy for you. And they actually ate really healthy in their family. But then their kids, I think it was around that time too, didn't want to eat what was for dinner. And it was really a good variety of all healthy choices, organic produce, vegetables, meat. And he said, oh, okay, fine. It's going in the fridge and you'll have it for breakfast. And if they wouldn't eat it at breakfast, he would say, fine, you'll have it for lunch. And it was like really hardcore. Sounds like that's not the best approach.
Mm-hmm. No, because again, if by doing that, what we have to really think about is that many of these things that happen can lead to eating disorders. If it's just this is where I want to kind of address right off the bat for parents is if it is behavioral, if there's a behavior issue right from the beginning, which can happen at this age, because this is the age where developmentally these kids are like, no, I want control over that. I want to decide what's for dinner.
Right.
So when we involve our kids, even at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, with all of a sudden they don't want to eat a certain food, where I have to say as parents, step back. Why do they not want to? In a second, I'm going to explain all the reasons that can be happening for your child, right? But step back and don't immediately go to that control. You control your kitchen. You will control what your child eats. However, if we do that and initiate that and push and do the forcing them to eat something or putting rules on it, or even giving children rewards for eating certain foods, all those things can play into something else down the road and again end up being a behavioral issue.
Gotcha. I just have to share another story before I pin you down on the reasons. I had another sibling of mine who lived with us for a few months during a period of time, and love my sister. We're very close. She's an incredible mom and only child, and her daughter, she handled it the complete opposite of my brother. So she would cook a meal. Let's say she cooked meat and potatoes, and her daughter would go, I don't want that. I want a quiche. And she would go, oh, okay. And she would go and prepare an entire quiche. This is an actual thing that happened. Once the quiche was out, her daughter goes, no, Mom, I don't really want a quiche. I want a sandwich. Her mom says, okay, make you a sandwich. Now, long story short, and then I'll let you get to the meat of the matter here. Both approaches, which seemed extreme, and you can maybe address it, but both approaches ultimately worked out okay. But, you know, those kids eat well today as adults.
Right. And one thing I have to say though, is they got lucky. A lot of times if you do that, and I've seen that in my family, where the kids were whatever they wanted to eat, they could eat. Many times that was fast food, energy drinks, all those kind of things that are then going to affect some things I'm going to talk about in a minute. But that's the point. I think that it's important for parents to understand is that both, by coming in too strong, too much to each extreme, either really rewarding, only making what they want, all those things, especially nowadays with the way our world is and how busy and all we are as parents, we can't do that. And I hear parents say, I'm going crazy because I can't get my kid to eat and I don't have the time to make them what they want. So again, we'll talk about that too, on how to change some of that. But you brought up some really good points. But when your child all of a sudden, and what's happening is, because most of the population we work with is unvaccinated kids, right? There's many of reasons that vaccinated children have eating issues and feeding issues because of some of the effects of those vaccines on them neurologically. Our taste buds are affected.
You can become hypersensitive to various things, right? Yes.
Right. But there are other things that can cause that. If your child has been sick and they've had the flu, if they've had an antibiotic, there's a lot of things. And that's what I help parents do, is when they reach out to me and say, all of a sudden, I'll be like, well, what's been happening in the last couple of weeks? Is there a reason, even in an unvaccinated child, is there a reason that you need to be looking at this? Because if you're not, that's when you can go into that mode of, well, this is just behavioral, and sorry, kid, you have to eat what I put on the table. There's a lot of foods out there. And I always hesitate to how much. This subject is huge.
Right.
How much do we bring up? But when kids are born, what their taste buds are very different as we approach adulthood, right? Well, they really start to change around that age 4 to 6.
Are they different? What's going on?
Well, you're born with more taste buds, and taste buds are different in an infant's mouth and up until that age 3, 4. Auxiliary, hope I'm saying the right word. Those buds are they're all around the tongue. They're not just the tongue, like they are when you get older and grow, you lose some of those. So what you taste and the intensity of the taste can be different. So with an unvaccinated kid, it might just simply be that they burnt their tongue. That's a traumatic thing. They choked on a chip. There's so many things that I hear of what all of a sudden may have caused this pickiness. If it's just that control, that's actually very easy, because that means that the nerves, if it's them just behavioral and what they want to have, and they're trying to inflict that on you as a parent, that's pretty easy to change. If there is an issue and there's damaged nerves and all those different things, you have to back up And because the taste buds regenerate themselves every 10 to 14 days, and again, as a kid is aging, what they have in their mouth is changing and lessening. But when they're really little, it's almost like a protective mechanism when they're infants. It goes in, and of course, they like sweet. And that's because
breast milk is sweet.
Yep.
Yep.
It's sweet and it tastes good. And I always wondered, and I have a lot of my own proof on this, is when you're nursing a child, if you're eating all the foods and you're not a picky eater, because I have to tell you, I've had a lot of parents reach out to me and say, all of a sudden my kids are becoming picky eaters. One of the first questions I ask them is, are you a picky eater? Were you a picky eater? Because again, if we want to go down this huge rabbit hole, there's some genetic factors to it, right? So again, if what we're really talking about today is the questions that's really been asked of us is what happens even in unvaccinated children to all of a sudden become picky eaters.
Right. I know as we were researching this, because I had not thought about this ever. I don't even think I was taught anything in medical school about this. And you were telling me, well, newborns have more taste buds. And I thought, really? And so we looked into it, and sure enough, they do, like twice as many as adults. And they're more concentrated when you're in a tiny mouth, right? And they're more sensitive as well. So things like bitter, what were some of the other flavors that an older person can tolerate much easier because their taste buds don't work very well. They're not as concentrated.
Right.
It's going to be harsh on an infant or child.
Things that are spicy, salty, sweet. One, if you look it up just for a technical term, is umami, is what you'll hear. Umami generally is organic, healthy foods that are savory, right? So kids, meat and things. And that's the big thing we hear, right? Is my child who used to eat meat, especially because we ground it up and had it, well, all of a sudden, or even eating a big whole pork chop, all of a sudden they don't want it. And they throw a fit at the dinner table, right? I don't want this. This doesn't taste good. I don't like this. And a parent's like, you just ate it last week.
Right.
And again, as a parent, there's this immediately, we get defensive. Wait a second. If we don't understand, and that's what I'm saying, try and understand why that may happen before it becomes a behavioral issue. It's meat. Because meat seems to be the big one that I hear when parents say, what they don't want to eat anymore. It seems to be meat. To parents, I'll hear parents say, does that mean my child should be vegetarian? What is your family doing? That's the other thing, Doc. I think you've said that before. What is your family doing? What fits in? It has to fit into your family, right? We can change things a little bit. We can involve our kids in making these choices and decisions. But at that moment when they reject something, you really need to make it okay with you. And the reason I say that is it will change, it can change, and there may be other reasons, right? But if you push and fight, that's when we see tantrums and what I call fake gagging. Because the bottom line is if your child's having an issue with something and they start to gag, it is a protective mechanism.
Yeah, the gag reflex protects us from swallowing bad things. Right. So there's two avenues I want us to look at. One is not behavioral, but all the other reasons that kids could become picky. How do we manage it? What is the best approach? And then we'll also talk about behavioral approaches when sometimes things become behavioral, I think, based on how we dealt with it, which, I can give you examples from my own poor parenting knowledge, information, style, whatever you will. I didn't know what I was doing. It was trial and error. So what are some of the things parents could do? Maybe start with the non-behavioral stuff. These are things even unvaxxed families are finding their kids are suddenly becoming picky. What are the techniques a parent can use to help the kids through that?
Well, first of all, is the reason, right? If they were on antibiotics, that can change your test buds. One thing that we don't really even think about is if they're eating only certain foods for a period of time, like I've heard of parents say that they've gone on vacation and when they came back, the kids didn't like those foods. Well, all vacation, they're eating different foods. And if they're going to Hawaii, they're nice and sweet and flavorful. So, my point to that is really paying attention to why your child, they changed. Again, colds, flus, viruses, strep throat is one that I've heard of several times. That actually was probably the only time my child was ever a picky eater, even through all of that, because I did things preventatively, because before I had a child, I had all my family, all my friends, their kids were picky eaters. And I'm like, that isn't going to happen in my house. But I started looking at why their kids were, and then you can maybe do preventative. But right now, at this time that your child is rejecting eating something, we step back and we look at why. And
Okay.
if those things are going on, then you remember, and this is for all of them, for all the different reasons that they may stop, is that the taste buds, the nerves, that sensory system changes every 10 to 12 days. So cut that food out for 10 to 12 days. And then there's so many ways to reintroduce foods.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So my big thing is, when this happens, just to keep it from becoming, because pick your battles, right? And bottom line is, children need food, and they need to eat healthy, and they need to eat good food.
Okay.
And that's one thing I learned from you, actually. I used to always say, healthy, teach them what's healthy. I just today decided, let's teach them what's good. Let's not just use the word healthy, because apparently that can bring other issues in, right?
Yeah.
So what are some good foods we have in our house? What are other good foods that you like? So it might be a sweet that we don't normally want them to eat, but there's times for everything.
It's a healthy
right?
version of a sweet.
Right off the bat, involving them is the most important thing. So after this cold, this flu, this virus, whatever it might be. So for my son, it was having strep throat. And then after having his tonsils out, there was aversions to certain foods.
I bet.
He had eaten so healthy, and that's what we have to think about. If your child's eating well, which is what we hear, they're eating really well, they're doing great, and all of a sudden they don't want to. Okay, give them some time. I think when we decide that we have to have control over it as parents, and we're going to tell our kids what they can eat, what they can't eat, and enforce, that's the key. If you enforce it by your brother's ways.
Yeah, or I'll share a guilt
Do it.
story of my own, and that was Brussels sprouts. None of my kids like Brussels sprouts. Well, there's a reason.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to cook them. I just steamed them or boiled them, put them on their plates. And at young ages, just steamed or boiled Brussels sprouts are bitter.
Mhm.
And that was a flavor that now I know they have more taste buds. So it was an even more potent,
Mhm.
negative response. It was like, I'm never going there again. And then one of my kids had some appetizer Brussels sprouts that were cooked with, bacon and all sorts of, wow, these are good. So there's things you can do to make a food that might be a little rough on a young child who has really robust taste buds and concentrated taste buds. So that was just something that I remember. But there's probably other things you can do to get kids to consider broadening their food choices once they get picky. What are some of those things you can do?
Right. Well, and first of all, I think we try rushing foods. I'm eating these Brussels sprouts, but I want my kid to eat them. Well, we already know that certain foods like spinach and kale and all those things, it's an intense flavor. Part of it too that we have to think about, and especially in unvaccinated children, because they are so healthy and robust, right? Everything is heightened in these kids. It tastes good. They're tasting everything. They're not, and
If it's
especially
good,
if
it's
you're
really good. If it's bitter, it's really bitter.
exactly
Right.
the intensity of it. So not, thinking about what we're introducing even through these stages. And when they hit that stage where, yeah, I don't care for that right now. Again, give it some time and come back to it. If it continues, again, what's the reason why? If it's just that they want a burger from McDonald's because that's what you stopped at last night after
They're
sports.
forever going to want a burger from McDonald's.
Right. So that's why, again, parents, what choices we make ahead of time are really important here. But again, however, back to this moment where this child will no longer eat this.
Right.
We've looked at what it is and say they haven't had a flu, they haven't had a fever. Now, again, what changes in a child's mouth, and I believe especially one that's unvaccinated, is temperature, color, and the feel in their mouth changes as they age, and it goes back and forth. And I don't think we always recognize that, because in some kids they don't have that. But if you've got a healthy unvaccinated kid that's used to eating organic, and those organic foods are so clean, but they have such vibrant, intense flavors, that as this child is losing some of those taste buds all around their mouth, as they're losing that, it's going to change what tastes good and what doesn't taste good.
Okay, but how do I get my child to even try, right? Let's just say my child right now won't eat anything green. So vegetables and even carrots and colored vegetables, they're like, they're not that interested.
Right.
They want white food,
Right.
that's highly processed. That's especially desirable.
Right.
So how do I get my kid who used to eat vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
how do I get them back to maybe eating vegetables again?
One, my suggestion is, which I know a lot of parents are going to disagree with, is give them a break. Why are we pushing everything? As long as they are eating the nutrients or have supplementation to keep them well,
But
that's what's
at
important.
some point, so, I used to say you have to take one bite.
Right.
You have to,
Right.
or you can't get up from the table.
Right. This is where,
Wrong again.
right. This is where I see the most important part is even at age 3 and 4, you involve your child. They need to know developmentally that they also have control and choice. Do they get to pick what they eat every single night for dinner? No, you're the adult, you're running the family. This is the things you choose.
So what do you do if they won't eat it? You put a pile of broccoli or a pile of peas or a pile of some food that you're pretty sure they're not going to eat, but everybody else is putting it on their plates. So
Right.
is that the right way to go?
So, first of all, I don't believe in, and I think this is an issue, and again, being a child of eating issues and disorders, you don't want to pile up food on a child's plate.
Mhm.
And this is where I'm going to tell you some tricks, and this is what prevents that from even happening, is you involve your kids in meal planning.
Mhm.
So many books out there for picky eaters and that still have good foods in them that your child will eat. Look back at what your child likes. Ask them, what do they want for dinner? What are some foods that we can pick? And I'm not talking chicken fingers and different things or hamburgers, but what are some of the things that you like? And again, if you start feeding your child well, which we do generally as parents with unvaccinated children, we pay attention to what our kids are eating.
Mhm.
But there are times that toxins and things can affect our child. Like if they do eat out, even every once in a while,
Mhm.
that affects the development and can change what they like, right?
Yeah, I certainly know if you get a bunch of MSG on your food, it makes the food pop. If there's a lot of sugar on it or other
Mhm.
forms of creating sweetness, it's a taste that kids are drawn to, right? If it's
Right.
highly refined, it develops its own sort of, whether it's fat or sweet,
Mhm.
it makes those flavors pop. And now vegetables that used to be, I mean, carrots are really sweet, but if you eat a lot of, I'll just call it junk food, carrots
Mhm.
aren't sweet anymore. They're not sweet enough.
Right. And that's exactly it. There's so many resources out there, whether it's cooking books, things online. I'm a resource. How to involve. So number one, you involve your child. Okay, you don't want to eat a pork chop tonight.
Mhm.
That's fine. We're not going to eat it tonight. What other things are we eating tonight that you would like to eat more of?
Okay. I'm not gonna have any meat. I don't like meat.
Okay. So what vegetables and things do you want to eat?
Oh, I don't like vegetables.
Okay, well, we're going to have to find some things that you can eat because you can't just eat sugar. That's not what you And again, make it fun for your child. Bring out the books. Have them pull everything out of the kitchen. Let them have fun.
Oh, well, I know the fishies are right there in the cupboard, and the cereal's there on top of the fridge, and there's dessert over there
Right.
that was left over from the last party my parents had. That's what I'm
Right.
gonna eat.
So this is a whole nother subject. This is where the picky eating thing comes in, right? When picky eating becomes about those things, those foods have to be removed. They just can't be in
Agreed.
your house. But that's why, again, I'm getting questions from families that our children are unvaccinated
Mhm.
that don't eat that way. They don't have those choices.
They don't have junk.
They might see
stuff
it
in
at
their-
school,
Right.
and then we can say, yeah, if you want to snack on, because they're going to be exposed at some point to some of those things, right? Birthday
Right.
parties,
Right.
whatever.
And then they're gonna want it.
Right.
A lot more.
Anything in moderation, but that's where you kind of set those guidelines with your family. You know what? Go ahead and have those right now. We don't have those in our home, so I can understand. Where I was blessed is my child would eat those things
Yeah, you had
that
an
were
unusual kid.
Lots of kids that were this way that were eat things like that and not like them because they had already been eating so healthy. So, and I hear that all the time. My kid doesn't want to eat cake or doesn't want to eat these other things when we go to party. Well,
Yeah.
good, you're lucky. But they may want to try certain things. And again, what have you established as a family and a parent? What's okay in your home? What are you eating? But if they choose not to eat anything, then again, we have to look at why. Kids will eat if they're hungry. If they're not eating and something else is going on, again, you just look at those things.
Yeah.
Why?
I would reinforce that, folks, because I've also dealt with this in my practice over the many, many years. And it's all really important that you clean up your pantry. I had to get rid of juices because that's all they wanted to drink. I had to get rid of all boxed cereals because that's all they wanted to eat for breakfast, after school snack, and dessert. And I had to get rid of cookies, crackers, chips, and desserts because my kids would pick at dinner and then be really hungry at dessert time.
Exactly. That's the other thing to think of too, is what I highly do not recommend, and I hear about it all the time as an issue, is if your child doesn't want to eat dinner, then if you use the punishment of, well, you don't get dessert. First of all, I don't think that dessert should be a regular thing.
Right.
We used to have our treats after school.
Mm-hmm.
And they go play sports and do different things, and then you eat dinner. There shouldn't be anything, especially with how late families eat, and then
Yeah.
you give them sugar. That's
Right.
the last thing on their mouth. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But you don't want to use that punishment of that. So going back to what to do,
Mm-hmm.
you're involving your child and seeing if they want to pick foods and different things. They grocery shop with you.
Gotcha.
Do you know what that is? Make shopping a game. Let's go. Now, one thing I learned is, and we hear this all the time, don't go shopping when you're hungry. So I've heard parents go, we have to go shopping right after kids' sports and they're so hungry. You bring fruit and healthy snacks and things that they can eat while they're shopping,
Mhm.
because otherwise, what is going to appeal to them, right? And I tell parents the same thing. If you're hungry, don't go shopping right then. And if you do, bring some carrots to snack on.
Yeah.
Because then there's this sensory thing that happens all around us. If we see all these fruity things and snacky things, but what about that? Why don't we have that, Mom?
Right.
But by involving them in it, then you take it one step further, 2 steps further. The next step is, if they want, you involve them in cooking. And I always hear people say, well, even at 4 years old, that's dangerous on the stove. No, they don't cook on the stove. But you make a place for them to sit down and maybe cut food. There's safe knives that the kids can use. You allow them to play with the food and the textures of the food. I remember one time when I was trying to get one of my nieces to eat, and she didn't want to eat something we had. And I said, well, it tastes different if you just pick it up with your fingers. Would you rather do that and then use a fork? She ate it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's okay to have tricks and different things. They outgrow that.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of adults who didn't. So again, allowing them that thing. The last thing is, so here they've helped you make the food. Let them arrange it on their plate.
Mm.
Make a design.
You don't put the food on their plate. You let them.
Let them, serve it. You're up there. Let them plate, like families, which we don't eat at a dinner table anymore with a bunch of food on our tables.
Well, we should eat at a dinner table together, not with the TV on. But so let's say you've prepared green beans, potatoes, or some kind of starch and a meat for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And they say you've done all these other things, shopping and preparing.
They've been involved.
They've been involved. They don't want the green beans.
Okay.
So you just say, okay.
Yeah, and they have to eat everything else. Again, parents, it's how you do it. I don't want the green beans tonight. Well, you might have put something on them different. You might have made them too salty. You might have made something that temperature, there might be something that doesn't taste good to them tonight. So if you have other choices and other foods, that's the thing. I think when you start to say, well, you have to eat your green beans and your chicken and your potatoes and all these things, they're different flavors. Sure. And at the time that those taste buds and things are changing, it can be too much. So they don't have to eat green beans tonight. They have to eat the other food.
So I've read, though, that sometimes to acquire the ability to eat something that, because those taste buds are so much more robust when they're young, that you have to expose the child to that particular food a number of times, like 10 to 20 times. So.
Well, I have a trick for that.
Okay.
Again, when they're younger, if before this even all of a sudden changes, and if it changes, it's because the taste buds have changed, right? What, again, with my picky niece, I would have her, like if we had green beans and she doesn't like green beans, I said, well, mine are a little different, lick it. She didn't have to eat it, she didn't have to chew it, but she had to lick it, she had to put it in her mouth. So then and then I'd say, well, why don't you like it? If she said it then, or she'd be like, there's several times when I would do that with different kids and even myself. I would just taste it. I wouldn't put it in my mouth. I wouldn't chew it, but just kind of lick it and change it and be like, okay. And it's okay to ask a child. I think you can say, I'd love for you to take a small bite and see if you like it.
Yeah.
Again, it gives,
You don't have to.
no, but give them some freedom too. If you say to them, I would like for you to take a bite, and if you choose you don't like it, this is your napkin, you can spit it out. By allowing them to do that.
That's what I didn't do. I forced my kids to swallow just one bite, but it was that pressure, and then that puts stress on the whole situation. And what do we do when we feel stressed?
Right.
We resist.
Well, and especially again, is there an underlying condition, or if it's just being behavioral? That's the thing for parents to figure out, and that's the fine line.
Yeah.
It generally turns behavioral when we force and do things.
Right.
I hear about kids throwing tantrums. This is one thing I am going to say. Your child sitting at the table, and again, if they've been involved with what's being cooked, there's things they like. So as long as they're eating those things and they're getting enough
And they are
nutrition,
healthy things.
and they're the things that are good for them, then that's okay. If they all of a sudden don't want to eat something, it's okay to say, you know what, tonight you don't have to eat that. We'll try it again.
Yeah, try it another time.
Yeah, we'll try it another time. Again, give them that 10 days if something is really changing and going on for them. Allow that to happen versus the forcing and pushing. You will find that kids will come around faster and go back to those foods that they didn't like. And if they don't, I think the thing we have to remember as parents, there's a whole lot of foods out there, a whole lot of healthy foods, a whole lot of good foods. I know there are certain foods, even as an adult, I don't like. Maybe it was because I wasn't exposed. Maybe it was because of a bad experience. We can go all into that. But the bottom line is when this happens, if we pay attention and we use it as a fun challenge and involve them, not just their eating changes, but their development changes.
Nice.
Wow, I can cook. I can do this. I can have a good attention, not negative attention towards it. So, and again, when they're arranging their own plates, there's something to that. I heard of a kid that didn't like their food touching to the point that if anything was even close, there was something about different flavors touching the other flavor.
Yeah, I've seen that and heard of that too.
So I said, well, it's okay if their kids don't touch. Well, he doesn't even like it on the same plate. Okay, well then get napkins, and if it's wet, you use
3 little plates.
Yeah, it's okay as they're developing.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think we forget is we think, okay, if they're picky right now, they're going to be picky the rest of their lives. I don't hear that very often. I think it's when we let our kids, well, they'll only eat noodles. That's all they'll eat. There are so many ways to introduce foods. Change the texture, change if it's, the temperature of it. Try different things. So just last week, when I was in Florida and cooking for my son and his girlfriend, and she's always like, gosh, you do salads so different. You cook so different. Well, I made Brussels sprouts and fish or something. And she doesn't normally like this kind of fish. So I put a gluten-free crust on it and she ate it because I was making things I like.
Right.
And she had it and she goes, well, this is different. And I said, but she likes crunchy.
Right.
So the Brussels sprouts, I used.
Boiled them, made them crunchy.
Yeah, I cooked them first to change the bitterness. When you boil something, that can change it. And again, how you prepare foods affects the way the food tastes. So you might have to prepare something a little different. And I think picking your challenges and what your battles are going to be is just really key here, right? So she ate the Brussels sprouts and she goes, wow, I probably would have eaten more. And I'd been cooking vegetables all week because that's mostly what I cook, and salads. And she goes, wow, I think I would have enjoyed food more.
My kids would have too. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to do a pantry cleanup so that what's in the home is healthy. So it doesn't matter what your kid chooses to eat because they're going to be getting healthy choices.
Right.
And then we're going to expose them to foods, but not force them to eat them. We know that repeated exposures eventually desensitizes and ultimately they may take that bite.
Right.
What about, let's pivot as we wrap this episode up. Let's pivot to behaviors, because I think whether you're vaccinated or not, the way we parents respond creates, turns it into a behavior issue, right? Because we create tension over it. You got to do it my way or whatever. But kid who's throwing a tantrum, or it's pretty clear that it looks like they just want their way.
Right. Well, I think I started and then we got off subject.
Okay.
If your kid, this is where again the parent piece comes in. If your kid is throwing a tantrum for any reason, and especially at the dinner table around food, that's just simply not acceptable. But if you yell at them, scream at them, they have to sit there and they have to eat and they have to, and I've heard this, I'll tell my kid to shut up and they won't shut up. Okay, I don't know if that's the best way. However, you leave the table with them. You have them leave the table. They're not allowed. Their tantrums were never allowed at the table. Kids are gonna throw tantrums.
Yeah.
Why are they going tantrums? Ask them, talk to them. But just punishing right away doesn't work. We're not involving them in helping them make decisions. Kids love to help. And that's why the shopping with. And if you say to your child, okay, you don't want that, tell me why. Help me help you like that food. What can we do to that food for you to like it? Or you just don't want to eat it, then what other foods will you eat that are good for you?
Okay.
But again, tantrums are not allowed at the table. Screaming and yelling is not allowed at the table. Taking your food off the table and feeding it to the dog is not allowed. I learned that lesson.
So well. I ate my vegetables.
Deliver. Yeah, I had my vegetables. It's like, oh, then why are you lacking that? Understanding that while this is going on, the most important thing is your child getting the nutrition they need? And one of the questions I'm going to ask you, because I do think this is important, and it's important in any subject we talk about, is supplementation for kids can be really important. And there's things you recommend that I believe that if these kids are on these type of supplements from the beginning, that it might be a reason why they don't all of a sudden go picky. Do you want to talk about those?
Well, I'm a big proponent of vitamin D, and I like the vitamin D to be with K2 because when you give first of all, why do kids need vitamin D? There's a very simple reason. The only way we get vitamin D to adequate levels is if we're living in sunshine. I mean, the sun is hitting our skin for, some people say 20 minutes. I think you need hours of sunshine without a burn. Because exposure, because that's how we make vitamin D. Well, nobody lives in the sun anymore. We put on clothes, we put on sunscreen, we don't get sun. We are all deficient in vitamin D. I tested thousands of my patients over my career. Everybody has inadequate levels unless they're supplementing. And you can't just supplement what most doctors tell you, 200, 400 micrograms or international units, sorry. That's not enough. An infant needs 1,000, a toddler needs 2,000, an adolescent or adult needs 5,000 IUs. But you need to add K2 so that the calcium that gets absorbed because of the vitamin D gets stored in the bones where it belongs. So that's one. Let's say your kid has no source for omega-3s. So our diets in America are way too omega-6 oriented. It's the fatty acids, which are very important for, when we learned in biology, the cell membrane has the lipid bilayer. Well, lipid, that's fatty acids. If you're having the wrong type of fatty acids, you are affecting every cell in your body. So you may need something along the idea of, ground flax meal, a right kind of fish oil supplement, maybe. There's things one can do. And then a lot of us are deficient in certain other nutrients and multivitamins and minerals, and you can get a multivitamin mineral complex. You don't always have to have those. If you have a kid that's eating a huge variety of fruits and vegetables, you probably don't need the multivitamin mineral supplement.
Right.
But you may.
Right.
Especially if you've got a picky eater.
And don't you think my question is because, and I get this question a lot and I answer it a lot, is if they're going through, we talk about, it's just a stage. If if this is just a behavioral stage I'm going through and I want control and I only want spaghetti, again, a day or two of this, and if you're concerned about whether or not your kids are getting enough nutrients, not just for the foods, but some kids won't eat a lot. They'll develop an aversion. Sometimes their tummies will feel really full and they won't want to eat anymore. So again, there's so much involved with food and eating and all those things. But if we're worried about supplementation, especially with meat, there are other different supplements and things that our kids can eat.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, if they're getting no protein, then you've got to do a protein supplement, whether it's pea powder put into a smoothie or whatever.
Mhm.
There are things what one can do. I think we're out of time for this episode, but I want to give you a chance to share on anything that you wanted me to ask you that I haven't asked you, or final thoughts for parents.
yeah, I think the one thing that we have to really look at is, and if you look at the way our kids are developing now and all of, I call it failure to thrive, not just as babies, but as kids get older, there are a lot of things, and I think that food is really important for us parents to pay attention to it being something that's enjoyable and good for them, and not put too many stresses around it, not to take it too seriously if they won't eat a certain food. Because if we do, and when we have to be concerned, is these aversions and these things can turn into feeding and eating disorders.
Mhm.
That's a whole nother subject. And that's what I want to tell parents is, what do you need to look for that there's an issue?
Mhm.
And that is they really don't want to eat. They're gagging on food, and not fake gagging, but you're seeing that this kid really doesn't like this. And this is when our mommy heart comes in. We got two kinds of parents. We have three, but the first one is, nope, sorry, you're not going to do that in my house. You go to your room.
Mhm.
There's this enforcer that
Mhm.
doesn't work around food. It
Mhm.
can cause eating issues down the road, especially. And then there's your sister. Sorry, Aunt
Love her dearly.
who we can't coddle to them either. We can't only make one food every night for our children, and we can't go in and make another meal just because they didn't like the first two we made.
Well, she could.
Well, I don't know that parents can do that now. I mean, if you can, but again, the point is, and again, your niece turned out just fine.
She did.
So part of it is, what can you do in your house? If you can't do that, then there's ways, again, to involve kids and make those things. If they are not eating, and there could be an underlying condition on why they're not,
Mhm.
if they don't want to eat and you notice weight loss and that stuff, that's when it's time to seek professional help. Now, if it's just behavioral and you're unsure, I suggest coaching with myself.
I was going to do that. So I have watched this woman coach so many families through so many issues, including this picky eating issue or behavioral issues that are around food or around parenting or whatever. And you have a way of coaching that really engages the family. And I mean, oftentimes when our kid has a symptom, it's the parents who need the coaching. I sure could have used your coaching when I was raising kids. Oh my goodness. Anyway, you go to kidsfirstforever.com. It's the number 4, and you can purchase coaching sessions with none other than Jam, Just a Mom, Dee Dee Hoover, who is amazing at this. And I'm not saying that's the only way to get help. Obviously, there are lots of resources.
Right. And what I want to make sure I say, if it is something around behavior or you're unsure, coaching with me or any other nutritionist or anybody else, like, that's important. If your child is vomiting and throwing up, what sometimes we don't realize is they can have an allergy. They could have a real intense sweet food. So if your child, if it's more than just this behavior issue, and if all the suggestions I've given you don't work, then you need to see a medical professional.
Thanks for watching, folks. I'm Dr. Paul, your host, and it's always a pleasure to be with you every week. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, we are live.
Okay.
All right, tell us your name, please.
My name is Monica Bandelier, and I'm here to tell the story of my husband, Ron Bandelier.
Okay, so this is about Pfizer, actually, the vaccine, actually, or COVID shot, whatever you want to call it. It killed your husband.
Yes.
So let's go back and talk about what led up to you even taking this COVID shot. Why did you both feel that you should have it?
Sure. So basically, you know, when COVID came around and then there was a vaccine, there was a lot of talk around dinner tables like, should we do it? Should we not do it? And it really wasn't an issue for us based on our age group because it was initially for the elderly. And so, but we did have a conversation with my mom because she was in her early 80s, and the way I felt about it is the way I still feel about it. I said, Mom, if you get COVID and die, you know, I'll feel bad, but if you get the vaccine and it's not safe and you have something bad happen, I'll feel bad. So I can't coach you one way or the other. I feel like it's rolling the dice. You know, what do you feel is, you know, the better way to go? So then they opened it up to our age group. And so my brother-in-law, actually to my brother and sister-in-law went ahead and got theirs. And my husband Ron and I were on the fence, and he's like, Monica, when are we going to get ours? And I'm like, we're healthy. I just don't feel we need it. And so it was Easter of 2021, and my sister-in-law was like, well, we got it. We're not zombies, you'll be fine. And so it was kind of, like I said, in 41 years, it's the only thing we just did not see eye to eye on. And so one day, May 5th, my husband comes home and he got his vaccine. And I'm like, great. And
that was Pfizer.
It was Pfizer, and it was at a local, it was Westworld out here. They had like the parking lot event. And so it was a drive-through, and he got it and came home, sore arm, and that was pretty much it. Well, then he got his 3 weeks later.
His next one.
The next one, it was a drive-through event, and he was so proud because our president was calling on our country, do our part, get us back to normal.
Biden.
Yep, President Biden. And so he was so proud, and they gave him a picture, and it was like getting an A on a report card, because it's like, I got vaccinated. And it was okay, and we never had a conversation again really about it. But
And you did not.
I did not. I still felt this gut feeling like, I'm healthy. We're healthy. We just don't need this. This is new. I don't know. And it's not that I'm an anti-vaxxer. It's just I didn't feel we needed this one. And so then our freedoms seemed like they were being threatened even more. Like, you're going to be sorry. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to get to go places. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot let this get in the way of my marriage. I mean, my family will get to go to Hawaii. My family will get to go on cruises, and I'll have to stay home. So we had gotten married on his birthday. And so I told him, I said, Ron, your birthday gift this year is going to be my first dose. And our anniversary gift is going to be my second dose. And he's like, oh, I'm so excited. And so he took me. And when I went, I had kind of a reaction, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my throat started swelling up. I could feel this cool trickle from like the left side of my ear go up around to my right side, and I can breathe, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was a little worried, and then it kind of subsided. So about 4 weeks later, I went and got mine, and I asked the gal at CVS where I got mine. I said, hey, has anyone had a reaction like that? She says, no, but honestly, if something doesn't happen within 15 minutes, if they don't come back and tell us, we don't know. And she said, I'm kind of scared to give you the second one. She said, but we do have 911 available. We do have an EpiPen. So she said, I want you to stay here for 45 minutes this time. So my husband sat there, and everything. And so the second dose was fine. So now, fast forward, we're talking boosters. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I was getting pressured at work, it was almost like segregated, vaccinated, unvaccinated at work. And I'm like, oh my God, what country are we living in? And so there was a lot of pressure. And so then it's just out of the blue, Tuesday, November 30th, I call my husband, I tell him on my way home. And he said, I'm so excited, CVS has 2 doses at 7 o'clock. If they don't show up, I get one. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a little kid excited to go, to tell Santa what he wants for Christmas. I mean, he was so excited. And so he went. I said, do you want me to go with you? He said, no. I said, well, you went with me. He said, that's because you needed me there. He said, I'll be fine. So he comes walking through the door, and I go, how'd it go? And he said, well, I'm here, aren't I? I said, well, good point. So we talked about it, and I said, just the next few days, it's really critical. That's when they say side effects show up. So whatever I'm doing, if I'm sleeping, if I'm at work, whatever, call me. Wake me up. Do not go alone on this. So it became Saturday, December 4th, 2021, which is just 4 days later. And I find him in his office, and I said, we just said good morning, and I said, are you okay? And he says, today's December 4th, 2021, right? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, I'm looking at my appointment book, and it said I had this client, and I don't know who that is. I said, okay. And he said, and I have this receipt that I went to Costco to get gas, and I don't remember going to Costco. I said, it's okay, Ron. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. And he said he woke up that morning, and he felt like he was late for something, that he had like an out-of-body experience. And so he said, well, I'm looking at my appointment book, and I have this client today and I don't know who it is. I said, okay, if you don't know who it is, I don't think I could trust you to be able to drive and know to stop at a stoplight. I said, I'm going to call CVS. He said, why would you call CVS? I'm like, well, maybe this is brain fog. Because everything I said, asked and answered like 10 times. And I'm grateful that he knew who I was and that he knew he was in his home. So he didn't want me to call CVS, and then we have a nurse neighbor. And I said, well, let me call her. Why would you call her? Well, I just want to know, if this is normal, because something's going on here. So finally, he said, Monica, I just need a few minutes just for my druthers, just to get it together. I'll be fine. And I said, Ron, you have two choices. We're going to go to urgent care, or I'm going to call those paramedics behind us that drive you crazy that you don't think they need their sirens on all the time. Because this is not fair to me. If you're having a medical emergency, I'm here to help you, and if you won't let me get help. So he agreed, and I called 911. I called and counseled his clients for the day right in front of him on speakerphone. And then he's like, well, I have an appointment today. I said, no, we canceled. Oh, okay, good. So then the paramedics get there, they rule out stroke, and they give him, they treat him and whatever. And one of them comes up to me and he says, I know you're concerned about the confusion. We're concerned about his heart. And he said, normally we don't transport patients. We only do for two reasons. One, if they ask us, or two, if they need it. And they said, in your husband's case, he needs it. I said, I agree. And I'm grateful I did that call because I didn't know my local hospital didn't have a cardiac unit. So anyway, he's laughing and joking with the crew, and he's getting loaded up, and I'm locking up and run around behind him because I'm going to follow them. And so we get to the hospital, and he doesn't have a room yet. He's waiting in the hallway, and finally they tell me he's in a room and I can go back. First thing he says to me, did you bring my appointment book? I'm like, yeah. He's because, I have an appointment, I need a call. And I said, we already did. He's okay, good. And so, in so many ways, he knew what was going on. In some ways, there was some memory loss. So we go in, and his heart is giving out excellent readings. It's just his T levels were high. And we said the only thing different was he got vaccinated. And they said, well, we've been seeing this a lot shortly after the vaccine, particularly men. They're coming in with heart inflammation, and we're not sure why. So this was probably about 10 o'clock that he's there, and then they ruled out he didn't have COVID. They ruled out again he did not have a stroke. So by 1 o'clock he's admitted, and his admitting cardiologist comes in and talks to him. And he didn't know about the confusion and everything. He said, wow, that's a lot of pieces to put together. He also acknowledged that they'd been seeing heart inflammation shortly after the vaccine, particularly in men. So they did not discount that, which was very, very good, So then it comes to be 6 o'clock, and his doctor for the evening comes in and says, well, he said, this is not a widowmaker. This is not going to kill you. You'll probably be on blood thinners the rest of your life. Worst case, a stent. We'll know in the morning. We're going to do a heart cath just to make sure there's no blockage we're not seeing. He said, but don't worry, you're going to be fine. This is not going to kill you. You're going to live. And I'm like, see, Ron? I said, you're just grown up now. Now that you're 60, you're going to be on medicine just like everyone else in the world.
So you were in the hospital with him?
I was in the hospital with him, yes. And
you were allowed to be in the hospital with him?
I was allowed because this was 2021. One person could be in, and I did have to wear a mask.
Did they ask if you were vaccinated to make sure you were up to date?
They did not, that I recall.
Because everyone else that sits there,
yes,
that are unvaccinated, were not allowed to see their.
I don't recall them asking. I just recall them asking me if I had COVID or any symptoms. And for me to stay, I did have to stay with a mask, and he was optional as the patient if mask or not. And so I had a mask. I'm freezing cold. He's burning up. They're bringing in, ice packs, for his chest, his neck, his head, forehead, and he's hooked up to all these IVs and everything. And so then it just got to be shortly after that doctor, all of a sudden, Ron said, Monica, I know who my client was. I know where my appointment was. Everything that he had forgotten, he recollected on his own. And I'm like, wow, he's going to be fine. He's back to normal. That's so great, because who remembers what they forgot, And particularly without any prompting. So it got to be close to closing, or not closing time, but visiting hours, 8 o'clock. And they were going to have to move him to another floor because whatever protocol he was required to have, that floor wasn't authorized. So I thought, well, this was a good point for me to leave. And, I kissed him goodbye. He said he wished he was going home with me. And I said, I do too, but I'm going to feel so good knowing you're hooked up to all these machines, all these people are here. If anything happens, I said, you come home with me. If something happens, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to sleep so good tonight. And so I hugged him and I kissed him with a mask on his forehead because I did not want to risk having a gulp of COVID giving him a kiss on the mouth, right? And in retrospect, I would have risked that had I known what I know now. So I go home and I go down the hall because, it sounded like it was going to be maybe a week or two recovery. So I went down the hall and prepared, a bedroom and bathroom down there because I knew, he'd want undisturbed sleep and rest and whatever. And then I go to bed, not thinking another thing about it, that he's going to be fine. And I looked to see when the hospital hours were, and I'm like, okay, he's scheduled for procedure at 9 o'clock. They open the door at 7:30. I'm going to have foot in the door at 7:30. And for whatever reason, I was up, like at 4:30, and, all of a sudden I get a phone call at 5:30 in the morning. And they said, are you Ron's wife? And I said, I am. She said, well, you need to get here as soon as possible. I said, why? What's going on? His procedure's not till 9. I'm not on his case. I can't tell you. You just need to get here as soon as possible. And I'm like, oh my God, he's not dying, is he? He can't be dying because she said he was going to be okay. He's not dying. And she said, I can't tell you. All I can tell you is they're doing life-saving measures and you need to get here as soon as possible. And so I just took a quick swipe of a toothbrush, threw on some clothes, grabbed my phone, and just got there as fast as I could. And the speed limit did not matter. I got there, I get to the emergency room because they said that's the only door that's open, and the security guard had just thrown up, so they said, you can't come in here. And I'm like, no, my husband's dying, I don't know where he is. They said, come through this door, you need to help me find him. And so finally they took me, and I went, and I didn't even recognize him. He had a team working on him. And apparently, sometime 3:30, they went to do a heart scan, and his confusion was back. And they said he was a little confused. And so they had to sedate him, and then he just never recovered. And they did, they were all in line to do, chest compressions and the paddles and whatever they do. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm witnessing a medical drama, on TV, but this is real life. This is not actors, and my husband is not coming home.
And he just passed away while you were there?
He did. And I did hire a private pathologist, and one of the things amongst the heart damage is pericarditis. And for those who do know, myocarditis and pericarditis are two adverse reactions that normally show up after the second dose, 4 days after the second dose. My husband's just happened to be 4 days after the third dose.
Tragic.
Very. He was a good man. And he was called to do his patriotic duty, and he was happy to do it. And he believed.
What about his family? What did they say? The sister-in-law that told you?
Well, I think they were all kind of taken aback, and I think we're all kind of wondering, like, are we injured and we just don't know it yet? Is it going to show up in years to come? Because we now realize that the human race was the third clinical trial for Pfizer. So really, we don't know. We just hope and pray for the best. And I just have this image in my mind. My husband was like a natural born leader, and no matter where he was, people just gravitated him. So I picture him at Heaven's Gate, kind of like a quarterbacker, and everyone affected by the protocol or the vaccine, that they're linebackers, they're lining Heaven's Gates. And when those who are behind that knew about all of this and still allowed it to happen, when they get there, my husband is going to say, sorry, wrong floor.
Thank you so much for telling the story. I'm so sorry about my husband. He looks like the Has it,
something.
just one quick question, has
Yes.
it made you question all the vaccination schedule now?
It has. I don't question the childhood ones that we grew up with, because obviously I'm here to talk about it. What I do question is the rush, the safety, because when you think of safe and effective, you think about Audi, you know, when their accelerator stuff, they were almost put out of business, right? Because they were recalled. Ford Firestone, when the Ford Explorers were rolling over, right? How many baby strollers and, you know, toys and things have been recalled, right? They usually don't take this many injuries or deaths to be recalled. So it has made me question any type of medicine going